Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Make a Better World. I'm your host, David Tare, and today I'm going to talk about the 2024 VP debate, which was on yesterday, and I just finished watching. And this one I really did my homework on. I took 13, total of 13 pages of notes. I watched the whole debate, and I'm going to go through, I'm going to try to summarize everything that was talked about at the debate. I hope I don't bore you guys too much. Maybe before I start really getting into all the issues they talked about and what both VP candidates, JD Vance and Tim Walz said, I'm just going to kind of summarize my opinion of the debate. I mean, I think Waltz won hands down. There's no question in my mind. But one thing I have to give J.D. Vance credit for is that he's a much better debater than Trump. I mean, no question. I think Trump's losing his mind. But at least J.D. Vance, even though I really don't like him, I think he's kind of just for whatever reason just going along with Trump, like a lot of other Republicans who are probably going to vote for him. He's a lot smarter, and even though I don't agree with everything he said, I think he lied a lot, and he didn't really answer most of the questions, and his main focus was on immigration. I mean, most of what he did at the debate was either attack Harris or attack illegal immigrants, and I think that's what he and Trump are running on, a campaign of fear. They want to make us all afraid of illegal immigrants, and they want to, and also J.D. Vance is claiming that Trump is going to help the economy. I don't agree with that at all, and I'll explain why. But anyway, let me just talk about the issues. I heard 10 issues raised at the debate, plus the final closing statements. So let me just say what the issues were. First issue was discussed. I'm going to give them in chronological order as to when they were discussed. So, actually, this is one thing I was happy about with this debate. I think they talked about really all the issues that matter pretty much. I can't think of any that they missed, hasn't really been the case in a lot of recent presidential debates, but it wasn't this one. So, first, they talked about the situation in the Middle East, the war between Israel and Hamas, which is a really horrible war that's been going on for a year already. The next thing they talked about was immigration, in particular the illegals. Um, and then they talked about the economy. And actually, I think I got these out of order a little bit. I didn't quite write them down in order. The second thing they talked about was the environment, particular climate change and Hurricane Helene. The fourth thing they talked about was immigration. Fifth thing they talked about was um, their personal qualifications for vice president. Sixth thing talked about was women's reproductive rights. Seventh was gun violence. Eighth was health care. Ninth was families, and finally, the 10th issue they talked about was the whether or not election fraud, and I put fraud in quotation marks. Anyway, those were the issues they mentioned, and I'll just go over each one and what each candidate said about each one and what my views were. So on the Israel Hamas war, Vance, I guess, was the first to speak, and he said that Trump delivered stability in the Middle East when he was president, and he's claiming that Harris is a threat. I mean, most of what he did in this debate was attack Harris, and he's trying to blame Harris for the unstable situation in the Middle East, and I completely agree. And he also mentioned peace through strength. He said that Trump wants peace through strength. I don't believe there is such a thing as peace through strength. If at least if we're talking about military power as strength, I don't agree with that. I think the only real kind of peace through strength is the kind of peace that Martin Luther King and Gandhi were able to deliver, civil disobedience and nonviolent protest. Maybe that's just my opinion. Maybe you guys think I'm too much of an idealist, but that's just what I believe. But then Waltz's counterattack on Vance, he said that Trump pulled us out of the international coalition and that he's fickle. And, fickle's not even a strong enough word in my mind. I mean, Trump's a big liar, and I think he's sick. And Trump doesn't care about the rest of the world. He just cares about himself. And yeah, I think there are some Jews who like Trump's foreign policy because he thinks he's more pro-Israel than Harris and a lot of the Democrats. I'm a Jew myself, and I think the war. I think Hamas is horrible. Don't get me wrong. I can't even imagine what it must be like to live in Israel right now, which is really sad in my opinion, since I'm Jewish. But and yeah, we have to fight terrorism. There's no question. I mean, America, we just had a 20-year war on terrorism. Which I think was about 19 years too long. But Israel's been have to worry about terrorism their whole history, and now probably more than ever. And yeah, they do need to defend themselves. And I might have upset a lot of you guys what I said about Israel a few weeks ago. I do. As a Jew, I do really care about Israel. They're my homeland, but I hate to see violence on either side. I wish there was a way. I am in favor of the two-state solution. But at the same time, Israel has to defend themselves. I remember when they set off the pagers. I have kind of mixed feelings about that because I think it's pretty remarkable Israeli intelligence that they were able to hack into the Hamas pagers and make them all go off. But the problem with that was they killed some innocent people when they did that. I mean, I don't think they had to make them explode. I think they could have just disabled them. Maybe put their own message on. Welcome to Israeli infiltration of your pagers. You can't get away with it that easily, or something like that. But anyway, that's not what happened. But anyway, I think that's enough talking about the Israeli situation. The second issue they talked about was the environment, in particular climate change, and specifically Hurricane Helene in Florida, which I've heard has been really horrible, probably killed hundreds of people already. This is nothing new. We've been having worse and worse hurricanes for probably the last 20 years or so. There's been deadly hurricanes almost every year. I'd say probably for the last 10 years or so. I remember Katrina. I was in New Orleans 2 years before Katrina, and I'm glad I was able to take a vacation there with my girlfriend when I did, because if we waited a couple more years, a lot of what we saw wouldn't have even been there anymore. So we were lucky that we got to see New Orleans in its full glory. But this is going on all over the South, and the islands, and climate's getting worse and worse, and our planet's getting more and more uninhabitable due to what we've done, due to all the fossil fuels we've burned for the last 100 years or so. We have to get off of fossil fuels. I mean, it's not going to be that easy, but we got to stop burning them. We got to stop, our dependence on oil and coal and even natural gas. We gotta go solar. We gotta use clean energy, even nuclear. Nuclear doesn't involve any greenhouse gases. Yeah, there are dangers of nuclear power, but I think they're exaggerated. I think nuclear is a lot safer. Actually, statistically, it's a lot safer than any fossil fuel production. So I'm all for nuclear, and I'm for clean energy, you know. But anyway, those are just my opinions. I want to talk about what the VP candidate said about it. So I guess Vance again spoke first, and he was nice. His heart went out to the hurricane victims, which was very nice and respectable of him. I mean, he is kind of a nice guy deep down inside. If you want to know my opinions about JD Vance, he's not a psycho like Trump. I think he's kind of stupid, but he's not a psycho. And, he is a simple guy from West Virginia, grew up in Hicksville, West Virginia. He's pretty uneducated, but he's not stupid. And I don't know, for whatever reason he agreed to go along with Trump. I disagree with him on that. But he's not a horrible person. He just his values are in the wrong place. And I don't care much about him fucking the sofa. I mean, that's just his, sexual perversion. I don't think that has much bearing on how he's gonna be as a VP. But anyway, then he said, I think he lied when he said this, but he said that Trump and he supported the clean air and clean water bill and all that shit. And then he talked about American families. Then he started his finger pointing again. He attacked Harris and he attacked China, and I mean, he had the gall to say that China was responsible for a lot of environmental damage because we're supporting China and they're using a lot of fossil fuel production in their solar cells. I don't even think that's true. So he was finger pointing on that. And Walz gave a good response. He said that Trump had called climate change a hoax, which he had done. And of course, Vance didn't say anything about that. And, and he kind of made a funny joke about it. He said Trump is investing in beachfront property. Kind of reminds me of Lex Luthor and the Superman series. I mean, I don't know how many guys watch the Superman movies, but in the first Superman movie, he bought all this worthless property in the center of California because he wanted to trigger a major earthquake that would make all the land to the west of the San Andreas fault go into the Pacific Ocean, and then he'd build a new frontier with all this cheap beachfront property he won, and he got. And Trump kind of reminds me of Lex Luthor. I mean, it's all about money for him. Yeah, and he jokes about buying beachfront property once all the coastal cities get flooded due to climate change. Won't be a problem for him. He'll just wait until all the coastal cities go underwater, and then he'll buy his new beachfront property in the new beachfront. He jokes about stuff like that. You know, he's a sicko, and I thought that was a good response by Walls. And he also said climate change is real, which it is. I mean, Vance never said that. I mean, now I think it's almost impossible for anybody to deny the reality of climate change and it's caused by man. I think even the Republicans aren't saying that anymore, even though I think some of them believe it still, and even propagate that myth. But as usual, Vance subverted the question and again attacked Harris. And anyway, uh, and one thing Waltz, the thing I like about Waltz, Waltz is pretty conservative for a Democrat, but I think that was good. I think Harris made a really good choice picking Waltz as her running mate because we need to win over some conservatives in this country. We need to talk some common sense into them. And he talked about farmers. Waltz is in touch with a lot of kind of mainstream people in the Midwest. Farmers. He said this is an issue for farmers. He said that farmers are having problems because of climate change, and a lot of this would get fixed if we concentrated on clean energy. And he mentioned the clean energy bill that got passed due to Harris. And I think it's really good he did that. And then anyway, that's all I want to talk about the climate change issue. The next issue, I guess that was addressed. I guess I got these out of order. Was immigration, and of course, Vance, that was his golden opportunity to do more finger pointing and more fear mongering. He blamed Harris for illegal immigrants coming in and ruining this country, which is bullshit. He even lied. He talked about, the, what did he call them? Uh, I gotta get my notes straight here. The drug trafficking mules. He said, because the question to him was what are you going to do about all these families that are going to get split with, you're playing deportation of immigrants and building a wall. And he'd even answer that question. He said, he just turned it around. He tried to make Harris look like the bad guy, by saying, oh, she's going to let in all these illegals and they're going to do all this sex trafficking and they're going to bring in all this horrible drugs into this country and it's going to be worse for families because of her. More finger pointing, and I don't even agree with what he said. And Waltz retorted. He said the thing about the drug trafficking mules is false, and he talked about the wall. He said, Trump was a big hypocrite about the stupid wall. He only got 2% of it built. He said, that was what he promised. I don't think he's delivered on any of his promises. He's not even promising anything anymore. He has concepts for plans, which he never has implemented any of them. He mentioned the wall, and only 2% of the wall ever got built. 52 miles of the wall. I think that the border between the United States and Mexico is something like 2,000 miles long, and yeah, we built 52 miles worth of wall. Trump said he was going to get the whole wall built when he was president. The first time he said he was going to make the Mexicans pay for it. Mexicans didn't pay a dime. He's full of shit. And then Waltz gave some good retortion on all this. Waltz said, and he's right about this, he praised Harris. He said, Paris has a really good record on immigration. He said that she worked with the president of Mexico to keep out illegals. But he did it through diplomacy. She didn't have to build any wall or threaten to build a wall. All she did was she negotiated with the government of Mexico to make sure that they weren't bringing illegals into this country, and that worked. Don't get Harris wrong. Harris is tough, but she's tough where she needs to be tough. She's tough on immigration in her own way. If you guys are scared about immigrants, if you guys are scared about Haitians eating your dogs or Mexicans bringing in drugs, Harris will take care of it 100 times better than Trump. Should be scared of Trump. You guys should be scared of, and you should be scared of all the neo Nazis in America. We're gonna have a lot more of them with Trump, believe me. So don't be scared of Mexicans. I've met a lot of Mexicans. I like Mexicans. Mexicans are very nice. At least the ones I've met are very nice. I used to go to Tijuana on a regular basis. I had a good friend for about 10 years. She had family members in Tijuana, and I used to go back and forth with her across the border. And there's a lot of things I'm very impressed about Mexico. They're very friendly people in general. I used to go to the dentist in Mexico. It was the best dentist office I've ever been to in my life. They let me watch rock and roll videos while they were working on my teeth, and they had a waiting room where all their staff would eat lunch and have a nice friendly conversation with you. Where do you get that in America? I mean, and it was like 5 times cheaper than America. So Mexico is not a bad country. I mean, they're poor. Yeah, there are a few bad people in Mexico, but like Donny Osmond said, one bad apple don't spoil the whole bunch, girl. So just remember that. Mexicans are okay, and Mexico is a very joyful country. One thing I'm impressed with about poor countries is they for whatever reason, they're very happy and they're very kind of family and community oriented. And they're not as fucked up as we are in a lot of ways. They're not all money grubbers. They're happy with what they have. And I think we should be too, and we have a lot more. So, anyway, that's my kind of preaching about why I don't hate Mexico. Yeah, so. Anyway, I guess that takes care of the second issue. Um, uh, yeah, and then they talked about yeah. Well, they went on more about immigration actually. Waltz gave more good retorts. He talked about the demonization, which is I think the thing I was just talking about now. How Trump and Vance are trying to make us hate the Latinos. I don't hate any group of people. I never did. I've never been a racist. And I've never said in my life that all X or Y. especially concerning people. There's always exceptions, you know. I mean, maybe there are some basis for some stereotypes, some innocent ones. I've even heard some stereotypes about Jews, and there's some pretty terrible ones, but there's some that aren't so terrible. Jews are smart, and I'm glad I'm Jewish because we tend to be smart, and we have good work ethics, and we value education, and we value skilled labor, and I'm happy about all that. And there's some bad things about Jews too. I think Woody Allen makes fun of a lot of the bad things about Jews. Jewish mothers tend to be very uptight. I know this from personal experience. So there are some things I don't even like about my own people, but we have to be really really careful with prejudice. We can never overgeneralize. There's always exceptions. But at the same time, we can't be colorblind, as they say. We have to acknowledge that there are differences in different ethnic groups and different races. We just can't, you know, start hating them, And I don't believe in any kind of superiority either. I'm not a white supremacist. I never have been. In some ways, I'm kind of ashamed of being white, actually. Whites have done a lot of shit. But anyway, enough of that. But yeah, the demonizations. So I guess I'm trying to demonize some of you. And um, oh yeah, then Vance went on about law enforcement. Vance seems to think that the solution to the immigration problem is more law enforcement. And he mentioned Springfield again, which he has a lot of nerve to mention Springfield after Trump said his big lie about the pet eating Haitians. And the one thing I really don't like about Vance. Vance even said this himself. Vance said that he was going to promote these myths to scare people, to make a point. He even acknowledged they were myths. I don't think he believes that the Haitians were eating the cats in Springfield. But he's already said he wants to promote these myths in order to scare people to do the right thing and keep the immigrants out. The guy has a lot of nerve. But anyway, enough of that. And then Waltz mentioned, Matthew 25:40. I'm not a fan of the Bible, by the way. I haven't read the whole Bible. In particular, I've hardly read any of the New Testament. I have heard there's good stuff in the New Testament. I know there's some good stuff in Matthew. I think Matthew was the one who said we should turn the other cheek. And he mentioned. I think let me just quote the 25:40. He quoted Matthew 25:40. He said, "To the least of those among us, do to me." I don't even know exactly what that means, but basically, just I've never even heard that, and I'm not even sure what the context was. I don't even know why I read that, but anyway, maybe I should get off of this one. Yeah, finally, the debate got so heated. They were both talking out of turn. Of course, Vance was the first one to speak out of turn, and then Waltz started doing it, and then the reporters shut off both of their mics, and then they changed the issue. Uh, and then the next issue was I guess the economy, in particular, cost of housing and the cost of insulin. And Waltz was the first person to speak about that. He said, that he wants to help small businesses, he wants to help middle class families, he wants to make housing and healthcare costs more affordable to all Americans, which is great. And he said he even did a lot of that when he was governor of Minnesota. He talked a lot about his triumphs as governor of Minnesota. And from everything he said about what he did as governor, it sounds like he was a really good governor. It sounds like he really helped Minnesota in a lot of ways. And, he said that Harris wants to do a lot of the same stuff for the whole country. So, and he also mentioned Trump. He said that Trump was proposing a 20% sales tax to help the rich, a sales tax on the middle class to help the rich get richer and screw the middle class. And I'm glad he mentioned that. And then when Vance retorted, he did more finger pointing. He said that Kamala, he blamed Kamala for the bad economy. He said that she drove the prices higher. I guess he was blaming Biden too. He said Biden, made the economy worse. And I've met a lot of people who've said this. I know that we had really bad inflation at the beginning of Biden's presidency, but what most Americans don't realize about this is that there were a couple things going on at the beginning of his presidency. First of all, there was COVID-19. And as you probably all know, COVID-19 was not only was a horrible epidemic that killed 1 million Americans, it also hurt a lot of our business. A lot of small businesses failed because of COVID-19. They couldn't stay in business. They had to shut down because it was a pandemic, and that hurt the economy. And that was one reason the economy started going bad. At the beginning of Biden's presidency. Another reason was because of Putin. Putin invading Ukraine. And yeah, a lot of people even blame Biden for that. But who set the wheels in motion? Who was the one who allied himself with Putin when he was president? That was none other than Donald Trump. Good old Donald Trump, friend of Putin. No, 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 no. If it weren't for Trump, Putin wouldn't have invaded Ukraine. And I think and the other thing I want to say about that is that Biden helped the situation in Ukraine. If it weren't for him, if Putin had his way, and if Trump had been president, you know, Putin would have invaded, completely invaded Ukraine in a week. I mean, the fact that Ukraine didn't get completely invaded, a lot of that was due to Biden because Biden imposed sanctions on Russia. If they were getting more money from us, he would have been able to do it. But that's why we had inflation. Don't forget that. That's why gas prices went up. That's why everything went up. And it was just early in Biden's presidency. It wasn't so bad. It's not so bad now. It's not so bad anymore. I remember, gas went up to like $7 a gallon in California, some parts of Southern California, where I was living at the time. It's gone down since then. Now I think it's less than $5 a gallon in most of California, and here in Nevada it's even cheaper. I think it's around $4 a gallon. Inflation's not as bad as it was at the beginning of Biden's presidency. This is something Trump and the Republicans keep. It's more fear mongering. They're exaggerating how bad inflation is, and Trump can't even talk about it intelligently. When he was trying to talk about inflation, he had 2 packs of Tic Tacs. That was his quote intellectual unquote discussion with his constituents. He had a big pack of Tic Tacs and a small pack of Tic Tacs, and I guess the point he was trying to make was that when he was president, we could afford a big pack of Tic Tacs. Now we can just afford a smaller pack. He didn't give any specifics. And of course, they sell Tic Tacs in different sizes, just like they sell everything else in different sizes. He didn't give any specifics about prices, and don't get fooled by him. Um, and yeah. Then so they were talking more. Walz said that stuff about COVID-19. He also talked about Trump. His non-payment of income tax. He hasn't paid any income taxes for the last 15 years. Yeah. Vance said we're bringing back manufacturing jobs. Like I said, Vance is a pretty good speaker, and he even if what he says isn't true, he's kind of convincing the way he says it. So, but don't be fooled by him. I think most of what he says isn't true. But then of course, he did more fear mongering, and this time was against China. He's trying to make us scared of China. He thinks China's, taking jobs away from Americans, and we're importing cheap goods from China. And maybe we're doing a little bit of that, but I think he's totally exaggerating and just a lot of fear mongering. And and then they yeah, and then oh yeah. He said the experts screwed up. He said Harris made the price of gases and groceries unaffordable. More of this lies about inflation. And then the next issue, I guess the reporters kind of embarrassed Walz. They said you promised to go to Hong Kong and you didn't. You didn't go when you said you were going to go. I don't know about that really. He did go later, and I guess he had a hard time apologizing for that. But he did say he went there this summer. He learned a lot from going there. I don't know what the big deal is about Hong Kong, but um, he kind of, I guess here he did point his finger at Trump. He said Trump should have come with us to China. I mean, yeah, I mean, I thought that was kind of funny, but yeah, and then the other thing Vance mentioned. I mean, he said that Walz mentioned. He said that Vance was so critical of Trump a couple of years ago that he compared him to Hitler, and now he's supporting Trump now that he's his running mate. And then Vance's only retort to that was, "I was wrong about Donald Trump." Come and then they started talking about abortion, women's rights, and the first thing that came up, the reporter said that, or no, I think it was Vance who said that Trump supported women's right to abortion in the ninth month. I don't know where that came from, but Walz had some good retortions. I mean, this is a big, big issue. I just 2 days ago, I was at the Harris rally right here in Las Vegas. And one of the biggest things that both Harris and the other speakers talked about was women's rights to do what they want to do with their bodies. I mean, if it's a medical issue, if it's a medical issue of a woman's, safety, if she's in danger from a potentially life-threatening pregnancy or whatever else is going on with her body, it should be between her and her doctors. It should be a medical issue, and the government should stay the hell out of it. And that's what Walz said, and I completely 100% agree about that. But, if Trump has his way with Project 2025, first of all, we're going to be a dictatorship under him. Second of all, Project 2025 makes the government have complete control over what happens to a woman's body. I mean, God, I don't even want to see that happen. There's going to be a lot of other shit that happens besides that. And I'm not even a woman. But I think this is horrible. I mean, I think it's barbaric what's going to happen with Trump. Yeah. You know, I mean, I am pro women's lib. I think I've been my whole life, even though I'm a man. I mean, you know, don't forget that women are people too, just like men, and they're just as capable and just as smart as men. And they need to be treated with the same respect as men, you know? I mean, I'm in favor of the ERA even. I think women should get equal pay for equal work. And, I've never been married, but, when I do get married, I'm hoping to find a woman who's as smart as me, maybe a little more right brain. Women tend to be more right brain, men tend to be more left brain. I want to be the math genius. She can be the art genius or the whatever, you know, foreign language genius. But, uh, you know, I want to marry smart women. I don't really like dumb women. I don't like dumb men either. But, I want to have, all the girlfriends I've had have been very smart, by the way. And at least I've tried to be as respectful as possible to them. And I think they know that. My ex girlfriend and I were still good friends. And she knows that I know that she's very smart. And I think she appreciates that. And she knows that I care about women and I think of them as people. Unlike Trump, who wants to go back on all this women's lib progress, take women back to the 1950s or even maybe further back. Anyway, enough of that. But, yeah, so I'm not getting to talk about everything that Vance and Walz. I just kind of want to say more of my own opinions about these issues because I still have a lot of notes here. But, Vance talked about families. He said that, he's trying to say, and I think it's a complete lie, but he's trying to make the claim that the Trump administration will be more friendly to women than the Harris administration because he talks about families. He's talking about how women want to be mothers, they want to have families, and how he's a better, Trump is going to be a better president and care more for women in general, which is total bullshit. It's based on a lot of things I just said, and they talked about Roe versus Wade. I think one of the worst things that's happened during my lifetime was the overturn of Roe versus Wade. If you want to know what I think were the two worst moments in American history during my lifetime, they both happened. Maybe the invasion of Iraq was one of them. Maybe Vietnam War. That was when I was a kid. But the other two, I think the other two worst things that happened during my lifetime, and they all happened just a few years ago. The first was the storming of the U.S. Capitol by our good old friend Donald Trump and his supporters. And the other was the overturn of Roe versus Wade. And I'd really like to see Roe versus Wade get back into our law, because I think women do have the right to decide what happens to their bodies. And I think life doesn't really begin at conception. I don't know when human life begins exactly. I'm sort of the opinion it begins around the third trimester, but I don't want to get into that too much. But anyway, and then they talked about gun violence, and this is a very, very touchy issue. And I've always thought gun violence was a big problem in this country. I mean, if you look at statistics of the United States, the amount of gun violence in the United States, like per capita murders due to handguns and firearms in the United States, compared to just any other country in the world, even other countries where guns are legal, we're sky high in that department. I mean, compared to Europe, I think we're like maybe 50 or 100 times higher, the per capita homicide rate due to firearms. In some countries in Europe, Walz mentioned Finland. It's even legal to own guns in Finland. It's legal to own guns in Canada. In Canada, things are so much safer. People don't even lock their doors. Uh, you know, the whole rest of the world is so much safer. I don't know what it is about America, but we have a very pro-gun culture in this country. Even Walz is pro-gun. I mean, well, a lot of people I've talked to, even a lot of Democrats, they're pro-Second Amendment. And I've heard some very persuasive arguments why we shouldn't make guns illegal. I mean, even there's a lot of Jews that think guns should be illegal, and they have good reasons for believing that, because they say, if the Jews, in Europe had been allowed to own guns, the Gestapo would have never been able to round them up during the Holocaust, and that's probably true, you know. But the way I see guns in America, my family never owned a gun, and I'm really glad they didn't, because I'll tell you what would have happened. If my family had a gun, I would have committed suicide. I would have shot myself in the head as a teenager, probably, or at least as a young adult, because I was so depressed when I was young. I didn't even want to live. And if I had access to a gun, I would have had no problem shooting myself in the head. So I'm really glad my family never had a gun, because I'm glad I'm alive now. I'm glad I got through that. But I hate guns. I hate gun violence in general. I even hate fistfights. I mean, I foresee a future where we won't have physical violence anymore. I don't have a problem with emotional attacks, because we're always going to have human conflict. I think that's inevitable. I think that's just part of the human condition. We're not perfect, and we do disagree on a lot of things. But I'd rather have a world where people just tell each other off. Maybe there'll be more suicides in such a world, but I'd rather have a world like that than a world where people are actually killing each other. That goes for war, and that also goes for domestic violence. I hate violence. I don't even like watching violent movies in general, unless they have a good point. you know. But anyway, yeah, and I didn't even really talk about what they said. Like I said, Waltz likes guns. He even hunts, and it's okay. And Waltz made some very intelligent comments. He said we can have guns in our society, but what has to change is our attitude about how to address crime, violent crime. And he's mentioned some very positive solutions. He said we're not even looking into this. We're not even looking into what makes people go crazy. Why there's killings in our schools, why kids bring guns to schools, and why the parents allow it. And, we could come a long way just looking at criminology, just looking at what makes people go berserk. It's not just a matter, I agree with him, that it's not just a matter of eliminating guns. It's a matter of becoming a less violent society and resolving issues peacefully. And he's smart. He said some good things about all that. And it's scary to me what's happening because, like my best friend, he's homeschooling his son, and the reason he's homeschooling his son, I didn't think it was a good idea. I thought the son should be going to school. He's about to start high school, and I'm a little worried about him because, I'm worried that he won't meet girls. He's not going to school. He's getting all schooling at home. And, I know that my friend, he's a very smart guy, and I think he's giving him pretty good home education. But the main reason I asked my friend about this a few months ago, he said the main reason he doesn't want to send his son to school is because he lives in Boulder City, which was about a half an hour from where I live here in Las Vegas. Very, very safe, very quaint community in Nevada. It's the only city in Nevada that doesn't have gambling, but the schools have guns. There's only one, real high school in the whole city, and their kids with guns at the school. And he's worried about his son. He doesn't want his son to go to school where he might get shot. I didn't have this problem as a kid. I had other problems in school when I was a kid. I was bullied all the time. I was bullied and teased, and I had horrible teachers, and my mom put me through hell at school. But at least I didn't have to worry about guns. I never had to worry about guns. I've been privileged in a lot of ways. I haven't even seen that many guns. The only time I've ever used a gun personally, I had riflery at my camp. I've shot rifles when I was about between age 12 and 16. I shot at some targets. I kind of enjoyed it actually. But no, I hate guns. I hate guns. And fortunately, I haven't been around that many guns. I never lived in the inner city. I guess I'm lucky. I'm privileged in a lot of ways. I never had to deal with gangs. I never had to deal with gun violence. I don't think my life has been in danger that much. Closest I ever came to dying was at a I went to a crazy party line party when I was in my 20s. This is when I was very depressed, by the way, and I was stupid enough to go to this party with these people I never even met before, just because I was trying to get laid. And I almost got killed on the way to the party. I was in a car with some crazy teenagers who was drunk. There was a 16-year-old girl driving the car, and she crashed through a railroad crossing after the gate went down. And fortunately, she was driving fast enough that we crashed through both gates. If we crashed through one, I'd be dead. That's the closest I've ever come to death. And I never want that to happen again. But at least I never was at the other end of a gun. At least as far as I know, I wasn't. I was mugged once. I don't know if the mugger had a gun or not, but I gave him my money. I was delivering pizza at the time in Hyde Park, which is kind of a bad neighborhood of Chicago. Maybe that was the only time I was really face to face with gun violence. The mugger hit me on the head with something. It might have been a gun. He didn't hit me that hard. I wasn't bleeding or anything, but I was scared as hell. And that was another very bad experience. But you know, at least I wasn't around a lot of guns, and I was never in a gang. I was never coerced into a gang. Glad I wasn't. But anyway, I hate guns. I hate gun violence, and you know, I think I should say a little bit about Scandinavia while I'm on the subject because, Waltz mentioned Finland. Waltz said that, they have guns in Finland, but they don't have anything like the kind of gun violence we do here. And I was just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in Copenhagen, the capital of Denmark and the largest city in Denmark. I was there for a week, and I was very, very impressed. I didn't see any poverty there. I didn't see any violent confrontations at all. I went to a couple bars. He went to karaoke bar. I got a little drunk and I sang 3 songs. I did a couple Beatles songs. I sang Twist and Shout. I saw her standing there. I also sang an Elvis song. I sang Viva Las Vegas. And there were like 5 really pretty blondes in their 20s who were all dancing with me when I was singing. And it got a little wild, but I didn't see any fights. It just seemed like a very, very happy and peaceful community over there. Kind of wish I could live there, but I don't want to abandon my home country. I think my country needs me right now. It'll need me even more if Trump becomes president. But anyway, enough of that. But yeah, maybe I should get off the subject of guns already. What was the next issue? Um, then the next issue was healthcare. Healthcare is a big issue. And, the reporter asked Vance the first question about healthcare. She asked him what plans does Trump have to fix healthcare. Of course, he doesn't have any. He said for the last 8 years, I have an outline of a plan to fix healthcare, which is just another way of saying I don't give a shit about healthcare. I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm going to lie to you guys and say I have an outline for a plan, but I have no plan to fix it. As a matter of fact, I think I want to ruin it. That's exactly what he's done and been doing. And, I don't know, Vance just kind of lied about the whole thing. Uh, he said Obamacare was a failure. I completely disagree. I'm on Obamacare right now. I'm getting Medicaid. You know, um, I'm glad we have it. We don't have a very good healthcare system. I'll acknowledge that. United States healthcare sucks. We should have universal healthcare like the whole rest of the developed world. But it's going to take a while for us to get it. Um, Hopefully, while I'm alive, I'll have it at some point. It'd be nice. It'd be nice if we could catch up to the rest of the developed world and have universal health care paid for by our tax money. Healthcare should be a right of all citizens in any country that can afford it, including us. That's just what I think. Yeah, there is a lot of corruption in healthcare. The insurance companies are really bad. I mean, yeah, they'll deny you any health care. If it was just up to them, they would deny you. They've been denying people. They've been denying cancer victims. I mean, there are people dying in this country of cancer because they can't afford treatment and other life threatening diseases. It's horrible. Our life expectancy in the United States is like 10 years lower than it is in about maybe 10 Asian countries. It's even gone down. Last I saw, life expectancy USA is about 76 years. It was as high as 79 about 10 years ago. It's actually gone down. And most of Europe and a lot of Asia, I think all the developed countries in Asia and, most of Europe, which is mostly developed, they all have life expectancies of over 80 years. So we're pretty low in terms of life expectancy. We're even lower than China now. And I think a big reason for that is just we have a broken healthcare system. We have a broken medical system. We're letting people die in this country. It's horrible. It's horrible. So, Vance has a lot of nerve to criticize Obamacare. Yeah, yeah. And he didn't say anything about what Trump wants to do about healthcare because he doesn't even have a plan. And he said Harris will ruin healthcare. Guy's nuts. But and then and Walz said Trump would have repealed the ACA, overturned the ACA. And then he said that Trump wanted to, and and then that got overturned by John McCain, Republican. There've been a lot of Republicans who opposed Trump because he's even too extreme among his own people. There's a lot of Republicans with enough common sense to know that he's been out of his mind ever since he's been in politics. God. He said what Vance explained Yeah, and then Walz retorted. He said what Vance explained is worse than a plan. Basically letting insurance companies decide who gets treated. God, yeah. And then he brought up, so I don't know. Yeah, and he talked about Minnesota and how he helped things in Minnesota. And then the next issue was families, the child care crisis. And I guess Walz spoke first on this. He said that Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave bill, and he's talked about how good that was. That there are times when people need to be with their families and they need paid leave so they can concentrate on their new families, and it's great, and he said that Trump is just giving tax breaks on the wealthy, and that he really doesn't care about families, even though he says he does. He's not in favor of paid medical leave, and Vance said we should have Vance just kind of waffle this whole issue. I mean, actually, I thought Vance made his best point at this point in the debate. I was almost convinced that he had a good point. He said we should have a family care model that makes this choice possible, which kind of makes sense in a way, It was kind of a practical point he made. But then the reporter kind of retorted to him. He said, "Child care has outrageous cost," and Vance tried to defend us. So, and then he started attacking Harris on immigration again. Brought up info. He said, and he's attaching her on companies shipping overseas, and I guess he's blaming her for having high medical costs in this country, getting bad medicine, all this shit, which I completely disagree with. And then Harris started, Waltz mentioned Harris says plan to give $6,000 credits to family who need child care, and how this was a good thing. And he kind of retorted to Vance. He said, "You're not going to get that money from tariffs. Your position on immigration isn't going to help us with health care." And then the last issue was voter fraud, and I put fraud in quotation here, in 2020. I mean, was a big issue by Trump and by the Republicans in 2020. I mean, there's a lot still. I don't know what percentage of the country, probably about 1/3 of the country, probably most of the Trump supporters, I think, are still convinced that the election was stolen from him, which is bullshit, total bullshit. You know, um, it was not a peaceful transfer of power at all. I mean, the whole riot was unprecedented in American history. Every other new president, we've had a peaceful transition of power. With Trump, it was the only time in our whole country's history where he didn't accept his loss, and he even instigated a riot against the Capitol where people were killed. You know, and they're still insisting that the election was a fraud. And the other thing that Vance isn't doing, he was asked this question. It was one of the last things he was asked, was whether or not, first of all, he was asked whether or not he thought, Trump was responsible in instigating a riot, whether or not he did agree to a peaceful transfer of power, which of course he didn't. And, whether or not there'll be another one if he loses. And of course, he can't answer that question. I think this is probably where he lost the worst. And Waltz was very, very outspoken on this, and I think he had every reason to be. And, another thing Vance did, which I think was just way out of line. Vance accused Harris of censorship. He accused the Democrats of censorship. He said that the fact that um, they weren't willing to acknowledge voter quote fraud unquote, which was misinformation on the web. Obviously, the reason that they weren't willing to acknowledge this lie was because they said they wanted it censored. He's accusing the Democrats of what he calls censorship of the web, censorship of misinformation. Look, I just want to say something about censorship. In general, I don't like censorship. I mean, there were, in the 1950s, there was a lot of censorship. There was censorship against the beat poets. They called it obscene poetry. Just because they were using swear words and they were talking a lot about sex and how screwed up our society was. But that wasn't lies. That was an art form. That was just people expressing their views, and that I do not agree should be censored. I don't think people's views should be censored. I don't think profanity should be censored. I think, our First Amendment is the right to free speech. And I think people should be free to speak whatever views they want. I mean, I do agree that we shouldn't yell fire in a crowded theater, but in terms of expression, in terms of artistic expression, I don't think that any of that should be censored. But what I think should be censored are lies. And there's a lot of lies on the web right now. I think everybody knows this. There's a lot of misinformation on the web. This is a big problem. That's why there's so many Trump supporters. They're getting all this misinformation that's so prevalent on the web. They're getting brainwashed. So I think brainwashing, I think lies, known lies, need to be censored. We can't be lying. I've never been a liar. In a way, it's almost like a weakness for me. I think I've been overly honest my whole life. Mostly my honesty got me in a lot of trouble. I said things I didn't need to say to a lot of people. I made myself vulnerable by telling people too much of the truth. And there are times when it's good to lie, white lying. There are such things as white lies, but they're usually benign. I mean, the bad kind of lying is lying that's designed to deceive. I am completely against deception. I think deception is very, very bad. I even go as far to say it's evil. And there's a lot of evil misconception on the web. And I don't want to go into religion. There's a lot of evil lying in terms of mainstream religion too. But I want to be respectful of people's religious views, so I don't want to go into that. But yeah, I hate lies. And if anything needs to be censored, it's lies. Known lies. Known lies need to be censored. And I don't think that's evenly censorship. They probably should have another name for it. Maybe just correction of misinformation. Yeah, restoring the truth. Um, and then the last thing I talked about was the closing statements. And I thought, I guess Walz made the first closing statement. He gave a very, very good closing statement. Um, what did he say? He said, um, that the Harris campaign is offering a sense of new optimism. And he's saying that, Harris is, he also mentioned freedom. He said Harris campaign is about moving forward. It's about personal freedoms. It's about a sense of hope and optimism and joy. And, I thought that was a very, very good closing statement. And he also mentioned fear. He said that Vance was and Trump were trying to make us afraid, afraid of illegals, afraid of, you know, um, mostly just illegal immigrants. But he said, he mentioned he quoted FDR, which FDR said one of the greatest quotes I think of any president we've ever had. He said the only thing we need to fear is fear itself. He said this at the height of the Great Depression, when 25% of America was out of work, and a lot of people were very, very afraid. And it was a very powerful statement he made, and I agree with it completely. I'm the biggest thing I'm afraid of right now is Trump. I'm not afraid of what's going to happen. I mean, yeah, we're going to have challenges. We're going to have challenges all the time. There's always challenges all the time. We're never going to live in a utopia where everything is perfect. That does not exist. But I think in a way that's good because I think that part of the challenge of humanity and our own existence is that we're always going to have challenges. We're always going to have problems, and we're always going to have to fix things. And I think that's our triumph when we can fix problems and overcome them and thrive and prosper and make the world better. I don't think it's ever going to be perfect, but if we can keep making it better, then I think we're doing the right things. And I think that's what Harris wants us to do. Harris is going to have some challenges. Don't get me wrong. We're going to have a lot of problems when Harris is president. You know, mostly problems that were created by Trump and I think a lot of the Republicans before him. You know, we're going to have a lot of work to do, but I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful about her presidency, and I think it's going to be a triumph. Actually, I think she could be the best president of my lifetime. I don't think she'll be the best president in our history of our country. You know, it's kind of hard to match Abe Lincoln, but I think she may be as good as JFK, maybe even better. Maybe our best president since FDR. I don't even know if she can match FDR, but you know, I'm happy with Harris, and I think I'll leave you guys with that. So anyway, thank you for watching. Go Harris. Let's make a better world, and let's start by electing Kamala Harris to the presidency. Go Harris. Let's get Trump the hell out of there. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.